Hello, everybody. It's good to see you.
Yeah, hold on. Oh,
All right. Okay, so I'm going to get started, and I always have a place where I get started where I say, welcome. I'm so glad that you're all here and you were able to meet during this sort of wonky time here. I have had meetings on Fridays, so they've been hard to get together. But I have a sliver of time right now and want to really be able to talk to you. I want to answer your questions, but I also want to be able to talk to you about the intense pre-writing and what you're going to be doing for your writing project. So I would like to open it up, though, first to see, do you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask off the top? Let me ask you another question. Was there a text or two that you resonated with, or a text that you just didn't like from this set of three of Kozel, Malcolm X, and Mike Rose?
I definitely found that I enjoyed the I Just Want to Be Average article. I super resonated with that one.
Share more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote our entire essay basically based off my personal experience with the public education system and how I almost felt like I became victim to the system. Um, I struggled through my math requirements while I was going through middle school and going into high school. I failed algebra 3 times in a row and still got into high school, and they put me into geometry, and I was so far behind that at that point I had just given up. So I did what I could, and I just ended up cheating my way through geometry, and that was the last of my high school math requirements. I then decided to test out, and I took the California High School Proficiency Exam, and I just left school from there and then went to cosmetology school right after. And so I was definitely relating to wanting to just kind of hide away and just be average under the radar.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I will tell you that today a colleague stopped me to say that they're having an argument about academic excellence and what it means to be academically excellent, and does it mean that you need to be good in all areas and have an overall solid GPA or not. And I'm of the opinion that you can be of academic excellence and not be good at everything, because none of us are.
Yeah.
None of us are great at everything. And then what really resonates with me is this idea of what does it mean to get support and to get help, and where does the buck stop with, in school? Because to me, I'm hearing your story and that makes me really angry, because way earlier on, this could have been caught and dealt with, but it wasn't.
Absolutely.
Also, though, you guys are all part of the law now that says that you don't go into non-college level classes. You have to be able to pass college level English and college level math. You have to have an opportunity to pass it within 1 year. And so PCC used to have 2 levels below in English. And what they found was that students did better going right into college level English, sometimes with support, sometimes without it. But the same is true for math as well. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around it. Although I do know that what's happening is that the math requirement is becoming statistics. But again, if students need help to go, math is different to me. I can wrap my head around the English scaffolding of that, but the math is a little bit harder for me to understand how to work it. And I know some of my math colleagues are very frustrated about it.
Sure.
So, but welcome. I'm glad you're here. And
I'm really enjoying your class, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I've had my attention is being pulled in several different directions, so I'm always appreciating when people are emailing me and saying, "Hey, this needs to be fixed," or "Please work on this," or giving me feedback so that I know how to help all of you. So thank you for sharing. Did anyone? Oh, by the way, I just want to let you know, Mike Rose did work at UCLA, and I've had the privilege of listening to him speak at PCC. He actually came a few years ago to speak to the school about how to help and support students. So
That's so neat. That's awesome.
that is, and I think I want to ask one of my colleagues if they have a videotape of that. I'm not sure if they do or not, but I'll inquire and see, and if they do, or if I can find something that showcases some of his viewpoints. He's an older man now, but I mean, he still has so much to offer.
Absolutely, that would be awesome. I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Anybody else have a text that they either really resonated with them, or they didn't like it at all, or anything? Don't be shy. Tori, do you have anything? Tori, are you there? I see you.
Yes,
see you.
I'm here.
Did you like the text or not exactly like the text, or were they just okay, or?
No, I like the text.
Pardon?
Let me get my book. I like the text. They're very interesting to read.
Was there one that you liked more than the others?
I think I liked Malcolm X's a little bit more than the rest.
And why is that?
Because he overcame his he overcame his, oh my gosh, I'm a little nervous. Hold on.
He was able to overcome being severely undereducated on his.
Yes.
Well, it was on his own, but it wasn't on his own. He was mentored, and yet he was also self-taught. And I think Malcolm X brings up this idea of what does it mean to be motivated. I think that's a really interesting question about how do we motivate students? What kinds of classes should students really have to take, especially with the advent of all of this technology? Can we be doing things way differently? Should we be doing things differently so that we don't lose students? To me, the saddest thing is when I have students who are in my classes. I know English is not everybody's major, nor should it be. But to me, I look at this as an opportunity to refine your writing and to help build your own voice so that you can communicate in whatever discipline you want to communicate in. But the motivation, I get sad that people go through 13 years of school and come out not excited about about learning. It should be something that we're excited about. Not all the time, but more than what I'm seeing.
Yes.
Would anyone else like to share anything before I move on? Alrighty, well, I'm going to move on. I am going to share with you a handout about pre-writing. And it's funny because to me, I would say this also about revision. It says, Don Murray reminds us 85% of writing is pre-writing. And we too often forget that talk is an important and, for some students, vital part of pre-writing. Now, the challenge in an online class is having that opportunity to talk, but the blog, the Revolutionary Writing, writing blog, to me is an opportunity for you to be able to talk about the texts and and have that opportunity. But I would say that I would argue, and this would, James, with math, that this will be funny, that 85% of writing is pre-writing and another 85% of writing is revision. So no such thing as over 100%, but I would say that, you know, that a lot of times we as students like to write the paper, turn it in, call it a day, hope it's good. But the reality is that writing doesn't exactly look like that. And in fact, I am going to, hopefully with the Zoom meeting, it takes longer for me to look up things. This week in my classes, my face-to-face classes, I actually read this article, and that's why it's coming up right away, called Shitty First Drafts. Has anyone ever read that before? Anyone?
No.
I'm gonna read a little part of it here. In fact, you know, it's funny is I've assigned this text before, but not all the time. But it was the first time that I'd ever read it out loud before, but I'd like to show it to you. And it's only a couple of pages, so I will make sure that I give this to you so you can read the whole thing. And it's very funny. And I like I said, you should read the whole thing and you need to get the voice in your head. But I'm going to start here with paragraph 3, and I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs. And it says, for me and most of the other writers I know, writing is not rapturous. In fact, the only way I can get anything written at all is to write really, really shitty first drafts. The first draft is the child's draft. You let it all pour out and let it romp all over the place, knowing that no one is going to see it and that you can shape it later. You just let this childlike part of you channel whatever voices and visions come through and onto the page. If one of the characters wants to say, well, so what, Mr. Poopy Pants, you let her. No one's going to see it. If the kid wants to get into really sentimental, weepy, emotional territory, you let them. Just get it all down on paper, because there may be something great in those 6 crappy pages that you would have never gotten to by more rational grown-up means. There may be something in the very last line of the very last paragraph on page 6 that you just love, that is so beautiful or wild that you now know what you're supposed to be writing about more or less, or in what direction you might go. But there was no way to get to this without first through the first 5.5 pages. And it goes on, and she shares a story of how her process of getting something down, the fear that she feels, sort of the panic that she feels, that she has it up here, but she has a hard time getting it onto the paper. And so I think what I'm going to do, let's see, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it on the Google Doc. This is what I love about Google Docs, is I can change them along the way. And I'm going to put it, I'll just put it at the back here. Fix where I add it later, but that way you can get to it if you want. If I can spell shitty correctly here. Okay, so I'm going to get this in, ready to go. It's here, and I can play with it later. Okay, so a lot of times students are not really used to doing pre-writing, but the reality is that everything, all the activities I'm having you do are really helping you prepare to write your essay, your writing project. But I've also designed a few other activities, what I call intense pre-writing strategies. And I call them intense because they're really meant to sharpen your focus. And at the end of the day, regardless of what class you're in, I see that these particular intense pre-writing strategies are tools that you can bring with you to pick out which ones you want to do prior to writing any paper for any class. So I'm making you do all of them for a couple of your different papers, and then after that, you can make a choice of what you want to use or not. I highly recommend that you go to File, excuse me, and you make your own copy so that you have a copy of this later on to look at. And I want to share that each of these steps helps you to be more focused and prepared to write. So what I'm going to do is I am going to explain each one, but each one has super specific things that you can read through and get some more detail. So when we're talking about shitty first drafts, this idea of looped free writing, I put this activity in as that kind of shitty first draft. And what I've done in many of my classes is I assign free writing where you just write every day for 10 minutes. Well, this is a focused free write where you set the timer, you set it for 10 minutes or you set it for 20, and you start to write. You don't lift that pen up. And you're trying to focus it on the prompt. So you should have the prompt next to you. I recommend handwriting it as opposed to typing it, but I'm okay with typing too, that's all right. And you write until that timer goes off. And I don't care what's on the paper. It can be, I hate this stupid paper, I hate this stupid class, Professor Mitchell-Lambert's an asshole, I can't stand her. No, I don't care because nobody's going to really closely read it. But your goal is to start to feel comfortable with the sound of your voice. And so what you do is you do the free write for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then you read back through it and you circle or highlight different ideas that you think might be good. Okay, there might be several, there might be one, there might be none, but hopefully there's something there. And then you're going to loop and go back and turn the timer on again for a little bit of a shorter period of time. And you're going to write on that one thing. Okay, that's looping. So you're looping back to that one idea. You're going to write for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, whatever you want to set your timer on. And then you're going to go back and you're going to read that paper and see if there's anything there. And then what's going to happen with that is that you then can go back to that first page and pick something else to write on, or you can continue to, like I said, with Alice, following her down the rabbit hole, and you can write on the next idea if you want. I want you to loop your writing 3 to 4 times. If this seems to be something that is working out well for you, I recommend looping it 5 or 6 times so that you have all these different free writes that you can actually lift information from and take it and put it into your paper. I also want to share with you that your blogs, if there's anything in your blogs, I told you not to pay attention to structure at all. I was not interested in structure, but you may have written some brilliant things in your blogs. You can lift that right out and you can put that into your paper, okay? So it's giving you some things to write about. So after you do the looped free writing, and like I said, all of these are linked, but I'm explaining them so that you can hear me explain them and then you can go back and look at them. I am going to show you the tentative thesis one. That's the one. So with listing or clustering, you may have done this in previous writing classes that you've had before, but after you've done your free writing, you can look through your free write, but you could also write down a list of things that you want to make sure you're covering in your paper, okay? And in fact, for me, a lot of times with timed writes, which we're going to talk about timed writes as well, is I like to make a list of things so I don't forget what I'm going to be writing about. You can list it, or you can do, well, I will go on to the stand-ups because I want to show you the bubble cluster. Or you can use the bubble cluster technique, which I know first grade teachers who use the bubble cluster, or second grade teachers, or third, who use the bubble cluster technique as a way of organizing your writing. So I want to show you the visual. You've probably seen this before, where you have the center idea. I'm waiting for it to come up. It's always a little slow. Come on, Zoom, hurry it up. I love Zoom. It'll be interesting to see when it actually improves. It says below is an illustration, but we're not seeing it here. Clustering, come on. Come on. You can do it. Here it is. So you're choosing an obstacle to write on. And so your obstacle might be in the middle. I'm not pasting anything. Come on. Okay, so that it can be in the center, and then you can come up with some other claims that you can include about the obstacle. And I also want to showcase and share right now that you do have to use at least one of those three texts, but you can choose to use 1, 2, or 3 of those texts. And in fact, if you want to, you can include the Gatto text in addition to one of those texts. It's up to you. So you have a lot of choices that you can make in terms of choosing the obstacle that you would like to write about. So James, if you just want to focus in on rows for your essay, you can do that. That's fine. I built in a lot of choice on purpose. So then what you're going to do is you are going to, after you've done the list or the cluster, and if you want to do both, you can do both, but it's not necessary, you're going to do a scratch outline. And a scratch outline just means you're now starting to put your ideas in order. Where are you going to discuss this claim versus this claim versus this claim? It's a rough. It's not any Roman numerals. I don't need it super specific in terms of every single piece of evidence and analysis. Just getting some ideas of where you're going to place things to give you kind of a map of where you're going to start writing. And I want to share that at this point, that the pre-writing is meant to help you. You're not supposed to have perfect pre-writing. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for you do it. And then as you start writing, you have the choice to go off that rough outline. You can decide that, no, I started writing this and now I want to move this here. It's not all etched in stone. A lot of times I've had students go, but it says it here. And it's like, no, writing is the act of learning. While you're writing, you're learning more. You're thinking more. You have an opportunity to shape it more. So I do want a scratch outline, but it doesn't mean you have to keep it and follow it to the letter that you've written. And then finally, you are going to create a tentative thesis. And what do I mean by tentative thesis? I mean that when you're writing your paper, just like I said, writing is the act of learning. You might want to change your thesis just a little bit, because as you write, you might change your mind a little bit. And so until you turn your paper in, it is a tentative thesis. But I also have several different strategies for coming up with a thesis statement if you need them. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. If you feel very confident with writing a thesis, then have at it. But I will showcase to you that I have a checklist for you to use on your tentative thesis. And I also have pages that are dedicated to making a stronger thesis statement that come from your writer's reference. Your writer's reference is amazing, so they may even have more up-to-date ideas. So, but this is actually a good sentence here to read to you, is that well, I'll tell it too because I read it really quickly. I get very nervous telling you that there's one way to write or you must write this way, because I don't want you to follow a strict format. Some teachers want you to do like, this sentence should do this, and this sentence should do this, and this sentence, in body paragraphs. I'm not that teacher. I think there's a time and a place for that, but it's not in college English. College English is a lot about trying to figure out how to be scholars, how to use the source materials, and giving you a safe space to be able to have a draft that's shitty. Okay, so here's the tentative thesis checklist, and this is what you want to look at as, to make sure, does the writer answer the question implied in the prompt? Has the writer taken a position that others might challenge or oppose? In this essay that you're writing about now, it's writing about an obstacle, okay? So it's not exactly like, I completely disagree with you. What it means is somebody might choose to take the texts as support in a different way. It just kind of reminds me of the whole thing that's going on with Trump and Russia and the Ukraine and all of this, with, if you've been listening to the news at all the last couple of days about him being impeached, and people are taking that particular text that was offered, and the left wing is saying one thing about it, the right wing is saying another thing about it, somebody else might even say something else about it. And as long as there's other ways for somebody to look at the material, it's not factual. Factual would not be a thesis. You have to have some sort of claim that somebody could disagree with. Another question is, for the length of essay, is it specific enough? And does the thesis pass the so what test? Meaning that, is it something that we care about, right? Is it something that's relevant? I don't know, a few years ago, with some of my research papers, I had students still wanting to write about gay marriage. And it's like, well, it's legal now, so let's move forward. I don't need to have an argument about gay marriage, but 20 years ago, I had many students writing about gay marriage, and I was like, yes, your voices need to be heard, and you need to be able to come up with information to be able to support your opinion. It's the same with the legalization of pot. It's legal now, so I don't need another pot paper about, you know what I mean? That sort of thing, that you want to make sure that that in this time and place that the writing is occurring, does it still matter? What's interesting, though, is I will tell you that when I first started teaching, students were still, wanting to write abortion papers. And I said, well, abortion's legal, let's find something else. But then in the last couple of years, when it's been threatened and rights have been taken away, it becomes a more relevant topic to write about again, regardless of what your opinion is about it. Does your thesis avoid the first person? And then I have a couple of questions here. After you've written that first draft, does the essay stay focused on your thesis throughout the essay? And does the essay adequately prove the thesis to be true? And then I have some aspects here about making a super structured thesis if you need it. Like I said, you don't have to use it. It's just on a need-by-need basis, okay? So I'm going to go back to here. And so what's going to happen is you need to upload all 4 of these pre-writing activities to Canvas. And this pre-writing is due on a completely separate day than your draft, because, like I said before, I think the pre-writing is extremely important. And even when you're going to do a timed write, we're going to have a conversation about that, but even when you're doing a timed write, taking a couple of minutes to pre-write makes all the difference in the world. So this was the main thing that I wanted to talk about today, but I am happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. So I'm opening up the floor and inviting you. Have any questions for me or anything you'd like to say or anything at all? All right.
Hello? Oh, wait.
Yes,
Sorry,
I
I'm trying to
hear.
figure out.
Is that you, Ben?
Yeah, that's me.
Hi.
So, hi. So, yeah, I got on like a couple of minutes late. Do you mind, like a small recap of what I missed?
I don't know exactly when you came in, but I will share with you for sure. I will give a brief recap, but I do want to let you all know for sure that I'm going to download this video and upload it and showcase it in the announcements, I promise. And so you can always go back and take a look. I like to remind people of that just in case. But what my recap is that we talked about the pre-writing strategies. And so we also talked a little bit about, was there a text that you liked and resonated with, or was there a text that you completely disagreed with? And then I opened it up and asked students to share why. So was there any text that resonated with you, Ben, that you liked or?
Yeah, I really like Gatto's, and as for the new 3 that you gave me, or gave us, well, to be honest, I still haven't read Malcolm X's because that's the only one I can't find because I don't have the textbook.
Okay.
But I did read the other 2, well, more skim through them. I haven't had a full chance to like look at them thoroughly. But from what I did see, I did which one was it?
It would either be Mike Rose
Right.
or Kozel.
I think it was Mike Rose's. I'm sorry, I'm struggling trying to remember what it was that really hit me, but yeah. So let's say if I wanted to just focus on his text, I could just write about him, right?
You could just focus on his, absolutely. You could.
Oh.
You have to have at least one, but you could write on all of them. But you have to make choices because this paper is longer than the last one, but it's not very long. Your papers are gonna continue to get longer.
Right.
Yeah, these are shorter ones. So.
Right.
I also read a couple of paragraphs from Anne Lamott's Shitty First Drafts, and you are welcome to click on that and also take a look at that as well. All right. So, anybody have any other questions? It was odd because I missed a number of students in the thinking about summary groups, which I don't get because I was literally looking at the Canvas grade sheet, so I was able to see everybody there. So I apologize for those that I missed, and thank you for emailing me and letting me know so that I could fix that particular situation. But anything else? All right. Well, I wish you all a wonderful evening, and I'm looking forward to taking a look at your intense pre-writing. Please, 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 please look at the email with the feedback about the last essay. It was group feedback because I saw these things in enough essays that it was easier to do it as a group. But I was pleased that each of the essays had some wonderful personal anecdotes, just beautiful, and I appreciated those. But make sure you're taking a very close look at the feedback because there's help there with MLA, and there's also some sample paragraphs, but not from your classes. So if you wrote a better paper than everybody else, it doesn't mean that I did not choose yours on purpose. I just had chosen them from the classes that started a couple of weeks before yours. So I will say goodbye, and we will have another Zoom session soon. All you have to do for the assignment for Zoom now, for this particular module, is to go to the assignment and say, I attended on XYZ day, which today is what, the 26th, I believe? The 25th. It's the 25th. So you can say that you attended on the 25th. If this is a video that you're watching, you do need to write a short summary and put that in there so that I can see that you were able to watch it. Anyway, thank you all. Have a wonderful day. And like I said, when we're doing these Zoom sessions, the more you speak, the better. I think what I'm going to do for the next one is that I'm going to give a list of questions out ahead of time so that you can prepare and then to speak, as opposed to be putting on the spot and trying to take the time to think, because I know we all need that time to think and consider. All right, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.